You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, along with my co-hosts, as always, Mr. Bob Harris and Mr. Kyle Dvorchak. Gentlemen, it's week 7 already. Mr. Harris, what is good in Albuquerque, New Mexico tonight, sir?
Everything's good except my heart hurts a little bit. All up in my feelings. My guy, our guy, the world's guy, Ryan Fitzpatrick was fired. Doesn't matter this week. It's a next week thing. The Miami Dolphins on bye, but it's Tua time. Tua Tagovailoa will take over as the Dolphins starting quarterback when next they convene to play the football, a week hence or a week and a few days hence. And it seems like, I get why you'd want to do this. The timing seemed odd, Kyle, the timing.
Yeah, so my only guess, because Ryan Fitzpatrick by all means was playing perfectly fine. Like, you would take him over a number of starting quarterbacks in the NFL because their division is a lot weaker this year than other years. They were certainly in the race. And they just pulled him, man. They just pulled him. My only guess is their plan all along was that when Tua gets an extra week of practice, we are just going to commit to him. And Ryan Fitzpatrick hasn't been a world beater. He's been good, but I don't think he has been unbenchable. Do I agree with the choice? No, I think I would have kept him in, but I do think at this point it's acceptable to say if you want to start Tua this year, which I understand why you would want to do that. This is the best possible time in the season to start him when you get an extra week of practice. Do I think it's unfortunate that it had to come off the heels of Ryan Fitzpatrick stringing together some good games? Yes, but I understand it. I don't love it, but I do get that at some point Tua does have to get in the game because he is the future of this franchise.
The path to Super Bowl success runs through a quarterback on his rookie contract surrounded by higher priced talent that becomes harder to put around him once he's making those hundreds of millions of dollars, although it's still doable, but it's a lot easier that way. Justin, so what? Sorry, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Get on with your bad self, and it's Tua time. But what is it? Let's get to the important part. What does this mean for the guys we're interested in?
Well, it means they're probably going to struggle, right? I mean, it caught us all off guard. And, you hate to see it to a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick. The timing is odd, to say the least. But I think he's going to struggle, right? We've seen this time and time again with rookie quarterbacks. It takes time. We're seeing it with Joe Burrow. So just to throw him into the fray and on a team that looks like they were doing okay. I mean, you got a backfield now with Myles Gaskin. I mean, the defense played well. We touted them last week, had them in every single lineup. I don't get it. I think there's going to be bumps and bruises, and I think the Devontae Parkers of the world, the Gesicki's, the Preston Williams, so on and so forth, are going to struggle consequently. So it doesn't make a ton of sense. I can't figure it out, but I cannot envision for the first couple of weeks anyways, him coming out and just lighting up. Oh, maybe he does. I mean, we saw what Justin Herbert did. Some guys just have that moxie, but the likelihood is not high, in my opinion.
Right, but you're calling out Joe Burrow. He's quarterback 16 right now, and were it not for the poor play of his offensive line, I suspect he'd be a fair amount better. And you mentioned it, Herbert just coming off a game where he threw 4 touchdowns, the first rookie to do that. So it's not like we're bereft of hope if you're invested in the Devontae Parkers of the world, the Preston Williams of the world, the Mike Gesicki's of the world. Sorry, man, Adam Shaheen's there. Get out of the way. So we'll see what that goes on. But that's a week out. We have some other news too. Michael Thomas, just has not played since he hurt his ankle in week 1. Seems like he's got a hamstring issue now to go with that. He missed the last game more due to disciplinary reasons, punching a teammate on the nose there. And so he was held out last week. This week he's dealing with a hamstring, has not practiced to go with the ankle injury. Kyle, at what point? I mean, you got to hang on to him, right? I mean, there's nothing else you can do, and you're going to play him the minute he's on the field. But given the draft value, the draft capital we invested in him, are we learning anything here? I mean, it's unavoidable, right? You're going to draft the best guys, and you're going to hope for the best, and then when this happens, you just kind of hosed, right?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's much you could say about Michael Thomas going into next draft season. When we look back at this season, like, should you have not taken Christian McCaffrey number 1 overall? No, he was going to, like we've seen with Mike Davis, he is going to play a role that is so incredibly volume-laden, and this exact argument applies to Michael Thomas, that no, I don't think the process went anywhere wrong. Maybe you could potentially argue, though, that when a player does sustain this type of long-term injury, you sell low on him in the sense of, I also saw a report today that Austin Eckler's injury is believed to be increasingly serious. Christian McCaffrey, surprisingly, might not even come back to like week 8 or 9. So maybe the only takeaway I think you could potentially propose, and I'm not confident in saying this, but I think there should be at least a conversation, is that you sell low when you've got a 3 to 4 week injury, because 3 to 4 weeks turns to 4 to 5. That player comes back rusty for a week or two. You talked about this with Deebo Samuel, and I think this argument could apply to a lot of other players, where if you can reasonably project a 3-4 week minimum, maybe you extend that to 4 or 5, and at that point you test the waters in your league's trades. I don't think it's a strong lean I have, but it's certainly worth considering.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So Raheem Mostert is not going to play. Sounds like he could be heading to IR. The enthusiasm already building, Justin, for one Jermichael Hasty. Obviously this seems to be Jerick McKinnon's backfield when everyone else is out. But what did you think of what Hasty did late in the game last week? Jeff Wilson still beat up a little bit. So anything there to hang your hat on, young man?
Not yet. I think it's Jerick McKinnon. This is what they invested in. This is the guy that we've been waiting to see for 5 years. It's a committee of some sort. We saw a committee with Kyle Shanahan last year. We're going to see another committee again. I don't think it's anybody's backfield. I think it's just going to be one of these committees where you're playing eeny, meeny, miny, mo each week and tonight. But we've seen some decency out of Jerick McKinnon. So he looks like a go. And he's that guy you're going to want in PPR formats, probably 10, 15 carries, 4 or 5 receptions, then you move on. But not a lot of optimism. Just like most of the league, it's going to be some form of committee as of now.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there, and I think that's the direction. And Tevin Coleman will be back at some point here, but I haven't heard a lot about him up to this point. A couple other little newsy items. By the way, just want to circle back around on something Kyle said that I should have hit right that moment. The point on Eckler was Anthony Lynn told reporters Wednesday afternoon, they were asking about his progress. He said it's going to be later rather than sooner, and that it was a severe injury. So a little bit concerning that. And McCaffrey, he mentioned, sounds like, week 8 is the earliest. Obviously, he won't be returning this week. So week 8 would be the earliest. And I'm starting to hear that week 9 buzz too. And why rush him back, man? Mike Davis getting the job done there as well. So there'll be plenty of injury information and other news, notes, and assorted tidbits, including columns by Justin and Kyle and myself even at some point on the website, footballdiehards.com. You should be subscribing to it. If you're not, you should go there now, footballdiehards.com/free trial. Take a look around, give it a test drive when you're ready to order. Go to the order page, use the promo code DIEHARDS, and you'll get all this stuff at 15% off the regular price, which is a pretty reasonable price anyway. Also hit up our YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the notification bell. We got all kinds of stuff going on there, including the Wednesday night DFS lineup show with Kyle and Jason Brady, which is amazing. I mean, it's amazing. But that aside, we're going to talk DFS right here and now, because this is where the real picks happen. I don't think anyone can deny that. The true gold is found in this mine right here. Justin, we're starting at the quarterback position. Blow some dust my way.
It's a juicy week. You have Russ at the top in a spot against Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. You're going to have to make a couple decisions here. Am I going to use Russ, who's going to need to get me 30, 35 points? Not right now. He's not going to be in my top 3. He's on the fringe there. Josh Allen's coming in against a lowly Jets team. Same thing. You're going to get the rushing equity. It is Wednesday night. We have to keep that in mind. But for me, the only lock tonight, and there'll be several, and just several, because we have to make decisions and kind of condense our list, it's going to be Kyler Murray. It's going to be Kyler Murray, who I was cynical about, man. See, I can be honest. I can, just kind of like Mahomes, but he's the real deal. I know it doesn't say much against what he did against the Cowboys, but the kid can do it all. I think he does have that moxie. I think the experience is showing itself. And at 7,100 against the Seahawks, I mean, guys, Cam Newton looked like Joe Montana. in Seattle, and we know that he's dust. So imagine what Kyler Murray can do at home against that secondary in Seattle. Love it. Love what he can do with his legs. 7,100, you're getting a discount off Russ. I think he can get me that 25, 30 points, and then I move on. And I'm probably going to stack him with DeAndre Hopkins. When I scroll down, Justin Herbert's in another good spot here. 9 touchdowns, 3 picks in the 4 games he's played, 24 DraftKings points. Doesn't get you that rushing equity that we like, but he's got a juicy matchup at home against the Chargers, and a lot of the Chargers are projecting well. Love the price, 6,400. Keenan Allen, Q-tag, kind of concern there, but if he doesn't play, I'll lock in Mike Williams in probably every single lineup that I have. I'll mention two more names. Joe Burrow is actually the first name that jumped out at me this week, primarily because of his price at 5,500 at home against the Browns. Love it. Love the fact that he got thrown into the flames. He has an arsenal around him. We saw our boy AJ Green come into the picture last week. I love that. You have a ground game, and Joe Mixon, who's also dinged up. So I could see somewhat of a shootout there. I would take 20, 25 points from Burrow and move on. Last guy I'll name is, if, gentlemen, Baker Mayfield does not play, big if, I will use Case Keenum at 4,100. This is a journeyman. He is not Ryan Fitzpatrick type journeyman, but at 4,100 in a game where you're probably going to see some points to bad teams, in my opinion, and you lock him in with Odell Beckham and move on. So just for sake of perspective, comparison, he's 4,100, whereas Russ Wilson is 8. So imagine what you can jam into your lineups if you're paying for 4,100 for Case Keenum. This is contingent on the health of Baker Mayfield. So tonight, gun to my head, it's going to be Kyler Murray. It'll be Patrick Mahomes is right there for me. It's going to be Justin Herbert. He's going to come back down to earth at some point because he's a rookie and rookies struggle. And it's probably going to be Case Keenum at just at 4,100. The passing volume, I can get 18 points from him and be happy with that, and then just build pretty much have whoever I want surrounding him.
Except he's not going to play. Kyle, your quarterback.
Yeah, so Justin named what is right now, looking at my cash game quarterback, Kyler Murray, on pace for 16 rushing touchdowns, just shy of 1,000 yards on the ground. I think over 130 rush attempts. I have those numbers committed to memory, which I damn near do, because I love me some Kyler Murray, even when he doesn't get it done on the through the air, which he absolutely did versus Dallas. Didn't look great. It simply doesn't matter. He is basically Lamar Jackson as a runner, and what he lacks for in rushing attempts, and I mean, it's not lacking, it's just compared to Lamar Jackson, what he lacks in rush attempts and rush yardage, he is made up for in touchdowns, because, dude, I think he might be faster than, I was going to say faster than Lamar Jackson. Dude, he might be faster than almost every other running back. My God. Like, I am the least of film grinders. My life just exists spreadsheet to spreadsheet, but oh my, he looks fast. So, Kyler Murray, I think simply one of the highest floor plays, and versus Seattle, the passing game, I mean, it should be there. This should be a game with so many points. So in cash, I think he is my preferred play. Justin Herbert in tournaments, it is a now, given the context of Vegas just pricing every game up, a modest 49-point total, but that is still a lot of points for a reasonably priced guy. Like you said, 4 passing touchdowns the last time we saw him, and has gone over 300 yards, which is crucial on DraftKings in 2 of 4 starts. And his weapons are so cheap. Mike Williams is under 5K. Keenan Allen, who saw 40 targets in 3 games, is only 6.2K. So it's really, when I look at who I want to play in tournaments, I start looking at the receivers and work my way backwards to the quarterback. And I have found myself working my way backwards to Justin Herbert. I think he is simply one of the better tournament plays on the slate. So I've kind of gone back and forth on this. I talked myself into it a little more recently. Josh Allen, coming off of 2 bad games, is still expensive, and the Jets are not a team you want to stack that game because the Jets aren't going to put up points. They simply can't. They couldn't put up points against Miami. Rashad Perriman basically jumped into a number 2 receiver role. Jamison Crowder dealing with a groin injury. We should see, I imagine Jamison Crowder plays, but in what capacity? He busted last week. I think if we get a super cheap Rashad Perriman and no John Brown, there are so many cheap options in the Buffalo game that you don't need it to go absolutely berserk for it to score points, because outside of Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, your double stack and your run back are going to be like 3K players in Gabriel Davis, although you could argue Cole Beasley as well, and Brashad Perriman. So this is a play that I typically don't look to target games where one team is just downright awful. I have that argument made for Kansas City versus Denver. But given the value, I think the value in specifically Brashad Perriman and Gabriel Davis, assuming John Brown doesn't play, didn't practice with a knee injury, the value is too good to not at least have some exposure to Josh Allen.
And the fact that nobody mentioned Kyle Allen makes me want to cry. Okay. Is it the lack of weapons, guys? What is it? It's Dallas.
No,
yeah,
Kyle Allen's bad.
I'm with you. I looked at him. You know what? I looked at him though at that price point and against Dallas, and they're terrible. And I think you put him with Terry McLaurin, even use Gibson if they were to use him right and more often. That's a nice cheap stack that can just go off. Yeah, I'm there with that.
Right. I'll lay off my sad trombone now and ask Kyle to divulge his running back picks.
So at running back, I am going to just continually harp on one specific game. It is Seattle versus Arizona. Ownership looks fairly flat, and it is surprising to me that this game isn't just the chalk of the chalk. I mean, Kyler Murray versus Russell Wilson. Kyler Murray facing a horrible defense. Russell Wilson absolutely cooking all year. I don't get why this game isn't going to be more popular. And one way you could potentially get unique and attack it is Kenyon Drake at 4.8K on DraftKings. I get it. He literally is a 0 in the passing game. I think he's averaging 1 catch per game, and he's not doing a ton with it. You know, passing game aside, he has been a very good running back in terms of the overall volume he's seeing. Right now, he's seeing about 2/3 of the rush attempts. And we saw when you get that many carries on an offense that is capable of putting up points, you are capable of putting up points. I believe he scored twice and had that one long run to cap off the game essentially versus Dallas. Scored in week 1. Touchdowns are fluky, but his volume hasn't been, so I think at the right price, I'm going to be playing a little bit of Kenyon Drake in specifically run backs with Russell Wilson, looking to pay up. I'm not so sure how I feel about Zeke. I honestly would rather just go to Alvin Kamara against one of the worst, if not the single worst, running defense against Carolina. It's just the matchup is so good. And you're not being asked to pay like 8.99K for a guy like Alvin Kamara, whereas like his price isn't that much different from Ezekiel Elliott, but his volume as a pass catcher outside of Zeke's last game, which he had like 11 targets, has been significantly better than Ezekiel Elliott's, and his running game isn't that far off. He's more efficient. He plays on now a significantly better offense because of the presence of Andy Dalton, and the game environment is really good. So Alvin Kamara, if I pay up, if I pay down Kenyon Drake in my last one, we're going back to Mike Davis, baby. It's one bad week, and he still scored a touchdown, but he wasn't winning any tournaments because he didn't get the targets. I believe it was 3 targets. We have a larger sample of starting running back Mike Davis being Christian McCaffrey, or at least getting Christian McCaffrey level workloads, than we do of the 3-target game. So I'm going right back to it. I think both running backs in this game are viable because of their pass-catching upside.
I don't disagree with that. Just for the record, Mike Davis a little bit nicked up this week. He's practicing fully, has a little sore ankle, but there's nobody there to cut into his workload. Justin, go.
Yeah,
running backs.
Yeah, lot to unpack here. I think you do start at Alvin Kamara sub 8K. The spot is ideal at home against the Panthers. We've been picking on the Panthers. Run defense, I think Alvin Kamara. When you think Alvin Kamara, you think Christian McCaffrey, but not the 9K price tag. So not as consistent as Christian McCaffrey, but he can drop 40, 45 as well as anybody. I think my exposure will be contingent on the availability and the health of Michael Thomas. And that being said, that'll also sway me to use Emmanuel Sanders if Thomas is a no-go. I'm with Kyle as far as Zeke. I'm not going to go there. I think Derrick Henry is in a real tough spot against Pittsburgh, but pay up. It's going to be Aaron Jones. We saw what Derrick Henry did against Houston last week. I think Aaron Jones can do something similar for certain. I mentioned last week that there was a committee with Jamal Williams. It was strange a couple weeks ago seeing Aaron Jones off the field, but I mean, they're preserving him. And I think that makes sense from a GM, from a coaching standpoint, why they're using these committees, kind of preserve him when you need him. He's there, and he's involved in the passing game. So Aaron Jones, 7,200, I will be there for certain. I think Kareem Hunt is in a fantastic spot, has the Q tag. It's Wednesday, so it's a maintenance day, but he's projecting well. I do like some of the Bengals. Mentioned Joe Burrow. I think Kareem Hunt is a good run back in that spot. Kyle, you're right about Mike Davis. I think people are going to be off him. I think we all know that he's getting that Christian McCaffrey volume. So even though he doesn't rush for 100 yards, but he's getting 16 to 18 carries, you can depend on him for between 5 to 9 targets, and that's where you're getting. So you pay 6.6, you get your 20 plus points. and you move on with fairly confident about that. Kyle, you nailed it. As far as the Seattle-Arizona game, this is the first game that I zeroed in on. And it was just a matter of who am I going to use, Russ or Kyler Murray. It's going to be Murray. You got to pay up for DeAndre Hopkins. Unfortunately, I think he's actually, we'll talk about him next. But Chris Carson is a guy where we talk about him, seems like every single year, does not get the love that he deserves. And when he's healthy,
he gets it from me.
He gets it from you. He gets it from you, and that's what matters. But every single game, when he's on the field, this guy's going to rush for 1,100 yards when it's all said and done, 9, 10 touchdowns. So he's cheap as far as I'm concerned, 6,400. You're going to want Seahawks in your lineup. You're going to want Arizona Cardinals. I think this is somewhat of a swerve. I don't think Chris Carson's going to come in at a high ownership. He will be in my lineups. I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire in Denver. When you watched him the other night, this is the guy that they wanted to draft. I was skeptical about him. But the landing spot was ideal. He ran hard. He was involved in the passing game. He almost felt like, all right, Le'Veon Bell's on the team now. This is my job. I don't want to lose. And he ran angry. I mean, Marshawn Lynch-esque, not quite, but so it's his job. Discounted 6,100. I think the Chiefs are going to roll. I think Patrick Mahomes is in a good spot, and I want to occupy the backfield. So I will do that with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They're going to be winning, and he's going to get the football to preserve that lead. Scroll down. We had a DeAndre Swift coming out party last week, and some people told me to use him, and I was hesitant because of the boneheads that run the organization to Detroit, and he did that. His price is elevated, and rightfully so. If you told me DeAndre Swift was getting the football 20 times, I would be all in week 7, but we just don't know what we're going to get. Adrian Peterson pushed one in. That's not to say that I'm going to kick DeAndre Swift out of bed. I think he's in a decent spot at 5,400. I'm scrolling down. I'm seeing our boy Antonio Gibson. The Dallas Cowboys are just beyond demoralized. I mean, it's pathetic is what it is. And it's also pathetic, the usage that we're seeing out of Antonio Gibson. I think this is a guy where he should have between 15 and 20 touches one way or another every week. His price hasn't moved, but when he gets the football a good bit or a decent bit, he shows who he is. So another organization that has been poorly ran since Jesus was in kindergarten. 4,900, I'm looking at Justin Jackson. If you told me a few months ago who was going to be the guy behind Austin Eckler, I would have told you Joshua Kelly, but we're seeing it more and more with Justin Jackson. He's occupying that Austin Eckler role, involved in the passing game, 5 receptions last week, 15 carries, 71 yards. I mean, that's a line like Austin Eckler will have. They're in a great spot. I mentioned that when I talked about Herbert. There's 5 Chargers that you could probably use, and they're all projected well week 7. So sub 5K, Justin Jackson, you're telling me he's going to get 15 to 20 touches. I'm right there. And I wrote up Kenyon Drake on Digging in the Crates week 7, and I'm with Kyle. It's strange to see him have 0 involvement in the passing game, but I get it with Chase Edmonds. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Arizona, but this was the Kenyon Drake that we anticipated seeing. It only took 6 weeks, but here we are. And he broke one almost like a buzzer beater. He ended up helping a lot of people last week. He ended up screwing a lot of people because they lost because of that 69-yard touchdown he ran for. But you're going to get 20 carries. They run the football. I mean, people think it's just this video game offense in Arizona, but they're going to run the football. And Kenyon Drake is the centerpiece of that running game. So you're going to get between 15 and 20 carries out of Kenyon Drake. It's going to be some type of shootout. It has those ingredients. I'm nearly all in with Kenyon Drake, but he has screwed us before. I think that's as low as I'm going to go. I only named 15. But there are some good spots.
It sounded like 20 to me. I don't know. It just
it's a juicy spot.
It went on. I just want to say a couple things. The Chase Edmonds endless questions on him last week. I still play roles, people. So when you're asking the questions, and I get it. Chase Edmonds is capable of making a big play on a pretty narrow band of work, but it's a pretty narrow band of work, and I'd rather play the wider band of work, and that's what Kenyon Drake is getting. Also, Justin Jackson limited in practice today with a knee issue. That'll be something worth watching before you chisel that one into stone. And also, we hadn't really talked much about the Le'Veon Bell. I don't know that he's going to be a factor this week, but just let me throw this out quickly. If the complaint is he's going to get the goal line carries, So what? Clyde Edwards-Helaire doesn't score touchdowns anyhow. Levels of concern, Kyle, with Le'Veon Bell in for your Clyde Edwards-Helaire shares.
Especially for this week, pretty minimal, given that I think Andy Reid said he wasn't even sure if Le'Veon Bell would be active this week. So that tells me if he does manage to be active, it is a very limited role. It's like initial Leonard Fournette roles where it is just like the most basic stuff that you can get him on the field for. I think in this week, if we talk about it in the context of DFS, you're still pretty much giving Clyde Edwards-Helaire the same projection you would have. Moving forward, I think we can adjust after this week. I still think he mostly just sends Darrell Williams to the bench and probably plays a smaller but more significant, or a smaller bit of a larger role. Just a small addition to Darrell Williams' role. So I'm not awfully concerned with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I would be lying if I didn't say every once in a while I do wake up cold sweats in the night and say, what if all my Clyde Edwards-Helaire shares never score another touchdown?
Hey, well, it'll be the next one will be the first one, right? So it'll be okay. And I guess, I keep thinking of like, let's say the Nick Chubb Kareem Hunt pairing where, there's room for two backs to be productive in some offenses. And I suspect that's why he's there. Justin, just, a quick thought on that situation from you. It's going to be closer to Le'Veon Bell than it is LaShawn McCoy, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's 28 years old. He's also a monumental headache, as we're seeing, kind of like AB. So, they have a good thing in Kansas City for the foreseeable future and beyond. I mean, at least the next 10 years anyways. I don't know where, is he going to be disappointed in his involvement? Does he really want to win, or does he want to be the stud that is he going to relive the Pittsburgh Steeler glory days that'll never occur again? So I don't know. I think you sprinkle him in. But ultimately, guys, I mean, you give Clyde Edwards-Helaire the football 20 times a game. You use Bell when needed. I can't envision it anywhere near a 50-50 committee at this point in time. But look, Le'Veon Bell was on the Jets. Not a lot of room to run. The volume was there last year, which is why we loved him as a value in season-long leagues heading into this year. So to put him on a Kansas City Chiefs offense, it could be interesting. I mean, I think the mentality, the mindset could switch. But the reality is he's not going to come here and take Clyde Edwards-Helaire's job. I think he's a nice complementary piece if something were to happen, but time will tell.
Right. I think you're looking at 60-40 or to 70-30, somewhere in that range. But it could flip-flop any given week if there's a hot hand. If Le'Veon Bell makes Andy Reid's visor fog up, not in a bad way, but in a good way, maybe he gets a little more run. Anyhow, Justin, wide receivers, please.
Yeah, I mean, we love Kyler Murray. I think you go back to DeAndre Hopkins this week. He had 2 receptions last week. He did have that big chunk play, which, too little too late there. I think there's a good spot where you get back on him. You have to pay up, so I don't know what his ownership is going to command, but it's just that simple. You use Kyler Murray, and I'm going to use DeAndre Hopkins. There's no way in fading him. So unfortunately, you have to pay that $8,200 price tag. I think Devontae Adams, same kind of feeling there. 6 receptions. The targets were there. Are we going to see angry Aaron Rodgers at Houston? There's a possibility we do. I think the way you beat the Texans is on the ground, but I think you need to have a little exposure to both. I mean, there's some pieces underneath like Calvin Ridley. A lot of guys have the Q tag. It's Wednesday maintenance day. Do you go back to Ridley or do you stick with Julio Jones? I think that it dollar for dollar, it's Ridley against the Lions. I'm going to have to take a hard look where it's only Wednesday, what I'm going to do with the Atlanta side, because Matt Ryan has a full arsenal now, and that's scary if things click on all cylinders like they did against Minnesota week 6. DK Metcalf is priced up, but we love Russ, and we're going to need pieces of the Seattle offense, and I don't know that I'm going to spend $7,200 on DK Metcalf. When I look at him on the surface, he had 11 targets last week, but he's essentially a 4 or 5 reception guy. He's somewhat touchdown dependent. He's a beast, no doubt, but I'm more comfortable paying down a little bit to our boy Tyler Lockett, 6,600. Come back to earth the last couple of weeks. People are going to see that. People are going to think all of a sudden he's out of the mix, and it's the DK Metcalf show. No, not at all. Tyler Lockett is going to be locked into a lot of my lineups with the Cardinals. It's as simple as that. Kyle mentioned Josh Allen. I think this is a good bounce back spot for Josh Allen. Do I want to spend $7,700 on Josh Allen? No, but I get it. It's against the Jets, the rushing equity, and if I'm going to use him, I'm going to use with Stephon Diggs, who's top 3 projected wide receiver on the main slate. Another guy, he had 6 receptions, 46 yards. Not your typical Stephon Diggs week. It was sloppy in Buffalo. So I will go back there in my Josh Allen lineups. As I scroll down here, I think Terry McLaurin, we mentioned Kyle Allen. I think use Kyle Allen. You have to use Terry McLaurin. I mean, if there's going to be a spot, it's going to be against the Dallas Cowboys at home, sub 6K, 5,800. We love Scary Terry. I think this is a spot where he can go off, and you're not paying DeAndre Hopkins money for him. It's been a few weeks since we've seen with, his 25-point upside. Again, this is a position where there's a lot to go around, and where I like Joe Burrow, you're going to have to make a decision whether you're going to pay for T. Higgins, who's coming into his own, a little more, and that's safer underneath wide receiver Tyler Boyd, or do you want to get a real discount and use AJ Green? I'm not going to go there, but I will go to Brandon Cooks at 5,200. I think that Will Fuller's probably going to see Alexander. I think Brandon Cooks, all it took was Bill O'Brien to get shit canned for Brandon Cooks to come into his own. 17 receptions over the last couple of weeks, back-to-back touchdowns, and 21 targets. 5,200 Brandon Cooks. This is the Saints Brandon Cooks that we saw in bunches. I love the price. I'll tell you right now, if Mike Thomas does not play, I will use some Emmanuel Sanders at 5,100. He has occupied the number one de facto wide receiver one role in New Orleans. And because of the price and the volume, I will be right there. I think the Jaguars wide receivers, because you're going to need something to go along with that Chargers game from the Jacksonville side. And it's going to be tough. I mean, we want to say it's DJ Shark. That hasn't happened. Injuries have come into play. Keelan Cole at 4,700 is an interesting guy. I mean, a couple of years ago, he was the guy. 15 targets over the last couple of weeks. Cheap piece for me there. So I think that lastly, and by the way, Mike Williams, Mr. Air Yards, your boy Kyle, I think he's in a fantastic spot. I love the instant rapport that he formed with Justin Herbert. I think that goes a long way. So if Keenan Allen does not play, you lock in Mike Williams. And even if he does play, you lock in Mike Williams based on the matchup and his sub 5K price tag. Tim Patrick's the last guy that I'll mention. The Chiefs are going to probably roll. That's what Vegas expects them to do. That's what we expect them to do. You don't run it back with a cheap piece. It's going to be Tim Patrick. Last week, he got you 4 receptions for just over 100 yards. Able to hit that bonus, 17 DraftKings points, and you move on. Didn't even score a touchdown. You're content with 17 DraftKings points every single time. So we're seeing Deontay Johnson's playing 4,200. So there are some names at the bottom with some real opportunity. It's only Wednesday. But that's where I'm at. Oh, and by the way, I said Debo was going to go off. He did. I know Dempsey doesn't like him. Debo's cheap at New England. They're going to get him the football. I think he's another guy that he's going to open up some eyes.
I don't think it's disliked because any of the individuals there are all capable of having games. It's just an uninspiring passing attack from week to week. And that's the only issue there. Just on Keenan Allen, he was able to practice limited today, and Anthony Lynn said that he's not 100%, but trending in a good direction. So the fact is on the field is a pretty good sign. So, and I need him. Many shares. Kyle.
Yeah, I am all on board with the Mike Williams call. I won't add too much to that because it is just simply a good play that Justin laid out. I will add that just, the first, basically he's bookended his season with 8 and 9 target games, a ton of air yards in those games. And I think because his price is so cheap and because Keenan Allen is so underpriced, assuming we see Keenan Allen, and it was just back spasms. I don't think this doesn't have the trappings of a long-term injury, plus he gets the bye week. So, no guarantees that he plays, but it does seem fairly likely that he plays, I would imagine. So given that even if he's not at 100% health, 40 targets in 3 games, then he goes out with the back spasm. So I'm going to rule out the last game he played. Those are just incredible numbers, and they are awesome for my Justin Herbert stacks. I will say I have I don't want to say a little bit. I have a lot of interest in Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Not seeing a ton of targets, only 30 targets, but those air yards, 568 air yards, top 15 in the NFL. His air yard share, top 10 in the NFL. Just when you were getting that many looks that far down the field, you will have some blow-up spots, and you will absolutely have some dud spots. I was on him last week, and he gave me one of those duds. Ironically, was still in the winning Millie Maker lineup because he was stacked with Ronald Jones, who had a good week. He didn't do anything himself, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I'm going to go back to the well. I keep buying the air yards. It's a great spot, and I do think if you use him as your only Packers player in a lineup, he does give you a lot of leverage in the way Justin Jefferson did last week, whereas If he just catches 2 long balls that are both touchdowns, obviously that's great, but those are also 2 drives, entire drives, that don't end up accruing any fantasy points for Aaron Jones or for Devontae Adams. So I think he is a great leverage play off of some of the chalkier both wide receivers and running backs, and you can still run him back with the opposite side of the ball in Houston. I will say I am very interested in both DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, because I have a little bit of interest in Teddy Bridgewater stacks. DJ Moore, disappointing. I have a lot of him in Dynasty, have a lot of him in Best Ball, I have a lot of him in any format you can name. And it hasn't been great. But the targets are still modestly there. 48 targets is number 11. He's running a route on every single one of Teddy Bridgewater's dropbacks. And he's getting a lot of air yards because he's moving downfield. He's top 10 in air yards, number 6 in air yard share. And then I don't need to go too deep in on Robbie Anderson because he is operated as the number 1 receiver. Just like Justin Herbert, they're in a good enough spot. They're very cheap relative to their upside. I think it is an easy double stack with Teddy Bridgewater. So those are some of my favorite plays. I'll give you just one more. I do think I have a bit of passing interest in a guy by the name of Brashad Perriman. I talked about him earlier, but man, 3.7K projecting is one of the best values. I think Brashad Perriman, Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, you run it back with Josh Allen, I think that's a great stack.
Do you feel better with Flacco at quarterback than you would with Darnold with Perriman? Just a little bigger arm, maybe take advantage of that deep speed, or are you fine either way?
I'm fine. They're both bad. I'm fine either way because of the price. I'm not playing these guys because I think they have a great chance of hitting. And I'll throw out one more. I couldn't find him earlier, which is if you hear me go, I am interested in, it means I lost my spot in my show sheet. Tyreek Hill. He is not in a great spot. It's not a game I am remotely considering stacking. But Travis Kelce is coming in with a lot of ownership, and Tyreek Hill is very cheap for Tyreek Hill standards, $6,400. It's because he hasn't played great. But he's Tyreek Hill, and he's playing with Patrick Mahomes. So 6.4K Tyreek Hill, I think, is a good leverage play off of Travis Kelce. Maybe not the best projected play because Tyreek Hill hasn't played great as of late. I don't care. He's Tyreek Hill.
It's coming. We all know it. So let's navigate the murky waters of the sea of mediocrity. Kyle, starting with you. Justin, get your water wings on. You're next.
Yeah, so at the top, like I said, Travis Kelce is fine. I just don't think the game environment is great for him. Tyreek Hill, it's not a great game environment for him either, but unlike Travis Kelce, unless Kelce scores multiple touchdowns, which he's absolutely capable of, he probably does need a 9-10 target game to hit his absolute ceiling outcome. I don't know, Tyreek Hill probably needs like 4 targets because 2 of them can go for touchdowns, or he could run one. So not awfully interested in Travis Kelce this week. I'm much more looking to pay down in my stacks with Hunter Henry. Seeing, I think, 7 targets per game, not catching a ton of them, but I do think the way Justin Herbert has played, we can expect that to rebound. He's averaging over 50 yards per game. He's perfectly fine. He's cheap, 4.5K, or cheap enough at least. The slate just doesn't look great for tight ends. He projects fairly well, and he makes a ton of sense in my stacks. Logan Thomas still under 4K, 4 targets in every game this year, finally scored last week. Dallas defense is bad. Logan Thomas is simply just one of my favorite punt plays. And the last one I have, just another, if it fits, I'll go for it. Greg Olsen. I think he makes a decent amount of sense as a guy who's getting a lot of work in the red zone. He's still taking the field for a majority of the receiving snaps, and he makes a lot of sense in a game that is supposed to feature a ton of points. Basically, last week we saw that it wasn't Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, and Matt Ryan that won the Millie Maker. It was Hayden Hurst and Julio Jones because it was too expensive to go with Calvin Ridley. His 19 points just weren't enough. I think Greg Olsen fills that Hayden Hurst role in a Russell Wilson stack where it's going to take so many points for Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf to go off that the more likely stacking option is a tertiary guy plus one of the primary guys like a Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and then you run it back with Russell Wilson.
Logan Thomas did not practice Wednesday to open the week because of a neck issue. That's one to watch before you chisel him into stone. Justin, Kyle says you're perfectly fine, yet you failed to demonstrate it. I need it now. Perfectly fine tight ends from you.
Bill Belichick is going to take George Kittle out of the game, kind of like he did with Darren Waller. I think it's all Travis Kelce. For me, I think if there's been any continuity over the last couple of years, it's been with Travis Kelce, and that's just the bottom line. 6'3" at Denver. They're going to be up. I can envision something similar to last week. 5 receptions, 65 yards, 2 touchdowns, 22, 23 DraftKings points. I got to go there. I'm going to have, I usually build three or 4 lineups and spray them everywhere. And I think Kelsey's probably going to be in half of those lineups based on the price. If he was 7K, I probably would not go there. The health of Jonnu Smith is going to be interesting because then we get Kirksir, who's 3K, again, in a good spot. Well, not in a great spot because you get the Pittsburgh Steelers, but the volume might be there. 8 receptions, 113 yards, touchdown on 9 targets last week. That just tells you that Ryan Tannehill likes his tight ends. So I'm kind of hoping Jonnu Smith doesn't play because we're going to need some cap space this week. So it'll be Travis Kelce at the top. Hunter Henry is projecting really well, and he's staying healthy, which is surprising, but somewhat touchdown dependent, in my opinion. Had a touchdown last week. He's only had 1 on the season, but he's not a high volume guy. The targets are there. I'm fine with it at 4,500. He is one of those pieces that I mentioned that from the Chargers that are projecting well. So I'll probably go. I can envision myself going there. I think Austin Hooper is coming into his own. Targets have been there 6 last week. When you look at the stat lines and the numbers, this is why it's called the sea of mediocrity, gentlemen, because that's what you get. You get 5 receptions, you get 50 yards, and when you're lucky, you get a touchdown and 12, 13 DraftKings points. You got to kind of sniff out that Trey Burton, which we were all over last week, and he did his thing, and then he ended up getting hurt. I think he's healthy now, but 3,100, that's what you want. He ended up getting you 20-plus DraftKings points. You try not to spend up at the position. And definitely this is a week. If Jonnu Smith doesn't play, Anthony Firkser is the play for me at 3K based on the volume. Even if he gets me 10 points, you're content. I don't want 10, but you're paying 3K and you have paid up elsewhere. I think last guy I'll mention is going to be Dalton Schultz. I think they're a mess. I think going into Washington is a good spot. And he's being used despite CeeDee Lamb coming into his own. Michael Gallup kind of fading away and Amari Cooper being Amari Cooper. Using the tight end. You're looking at Dalton Schultz. He lined up often and in numerous spots the other day. So I could see Andy Dalton kind of leaning on him. Love the price. Still love the offense. Do not like Andy Dalton whatsoever. And that's the extent of my list. So it's going to be Kelce. I will have a little bit of Hunter Henry tonight. It'll be splitting hairs with Austin Hooper and Dalton Schultz. Right now I'm leaning Hooper. And hopefully, first of all, we hope Jonnu Smith gets healthy. We don't want to see anybody hurt. But it's going to be Anthony Firkser at flat 3K if Jonnu Smith doesn't play.
Yeah, I've been trying to think, did you leave any tight ends off that aren't on bye? Maybe. Give me defenses, Justin.
Oh, it's a good question because I do not know. And I have looked at the defensive position probably 15 times today. And I say this time and time again, we screw around and you end up with a -1 or a -2. When you look at these defenses this week, I hate to say this, but I'm probably going to end up with a lot of the Jets at home at 2K against a Josh Allen who has come back to earth a little bit the last couple of weeks. He's not Tom Brady, still young, but I mean, a sack or 2, they keep the game remotely close at all, and you get 8 points out of your defense, which I want more, or 9 points, and you pray for it and you move on at that price tag. I have no interest in spending $4,700 on the Buffalo Bills. I have no interest $4,300 on the Chiefs, and really nothing in between. I'm having a tough decision. I mean, the Cleveland Browns are projecting well, and I get it, against Joe Burrow, 2,800. But even in that sense, I'm not confident because we saw what Joe Burrow did against the Colts. I mean, and the Colts are a damn good defense. So it really is. I mean, we downplay the position, but it can really screw you if you're not careful and you don't have, if it's not somewhat dreamy of a matchup, because it can really backfire and you will lose money in tournaments. I need at least 6 or 7, and I'm having difficulty week 7. Honestly, Kyle, I mean, is there anybody that you've locked in right now? Or I know you downplay the position. You're one of those guys, but I can't do it. I mean,
yeah, defense doesn't matter. Play whoever you want. Save some money, play whoever. I like Washington. Defense is by far the position that ownership least predicts actual outcomes, and it is not a particularly close race. So one, I'm generally trying to save money because it's random. I do think there are some spots where it's worth paying like over $3K. I'm never really paying up these $4K plus defenses. For me, Washington this week, fine enough matchup against Andy Dalton, and their front seven, especially their defensive line, is absolutely monstrous. And this Dallas offensive line just continues to sustain injuries. So Washington football team is fine. I have Browns as the best projected defense in terms of points per dollar. Cincinnati taking sacks at the second highest rate and the highest rate of the main slate because Carson Wentz is the highest sack taker on a per game basis. So I like the Browns, another team with a defense with talent. I don't know if they put it all together. I don't really care because they're cheap and they play Joe Burrow. Outside of that, I'm not really going to go too heavy on anyone else. I think maybe the Lions at 2.2K basically have that same Jets vibe where if you're going to pay nothing, for a defense, why not do it against Matt Ryan, you know?
Yeah.
At
least he's going to be putting the ball up a little bit. You have your opportunities. Exactly. Honestly, guys, I feel like we buried the lead here totally with Justin breaking news that Josh Allen's younger than Tom Brady. I suspect he got that from his sources like Fred Smirlis. All right, guys.
But how's Cam Newton doing? I mean,
Cam Newton. Honestly, Cam Newton, the weeks he shows up is phenomenal, right?
Yeah, the weeks he
the highs are high, man. The highs are high. It's just you're not always the highs, but we saw.
I think you said. I think you meant the high.
Yeah,
high, right?
Yeah.
I think it was just once. All right, fellas. So everyone head for Football Diehards. Again, if you're listening to this podcast, it's out there floating through the ether, and you're going, "Who are these guys? What are they up to?" Go to footballdiehards.com. Check out the website footballdiehards.com/free trial. Gets you a free pass to take a look around, see what we're up to. Kyle's rankings are up. The staff rankings are up. Justin's Digging in the Crates article will be up, Friday, Justin?
Tomorrow. Should be up tomorrow, Thursday.
Yep, Thursday. So that means it'll be there Friday as well. I was still correct. Kyle's DFS articles, the cash and GPP lineup breakdowns are available already, as is his Wednesday DFS tournament or DFS lineup show with Jason Brady. So tons of stuff goes all the way up through all the kickoff windows on Sunday. You can hear me, Bob Harris, on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio throughout the week. Do that, including the pregame show on Sunday mornings with Jeff Mann, so you can get all the latest inactives and all that kind of fun stuff. So do all those things at footballdiehards.com.
And there we have it. For myself at Kyle Tweets here, for Bob at Football Diehard, and for Justin at Justin Lonero. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you next week.